loneliness being called a social epidemic, Theresa May has appointed a new minister to tackle the problem. The post went to MP for Chatham and Elsford, Tracy Crouch. The campaign to address the issue was led by MP Jo Cox, who was murdered by a far-right extremist 2 years ago. Over 9 million people are believed to suffer from loneliness, which is said to be more damaging than smoking 15 cigarettes a day. 200,000 elderly people say they have not spoken to a friend or relative in over a month, and 4 in 5 disabled adults, aged between 18 and 34, reportedly feel lonely on a typical day. Theresa May says a cross-government strategy on the problem will be released later this year, with a new fund expected to be set up. Well, Twitter has responded to the news, with one user posting a sad picture of the Prime Minister sitting alone. Another mocked the new role, suggesting such a position should not be footed by the taxpayer, and many users praised the move, with one calling isolation a huge killer. Well, we spoke about the new position with full-time carer Claire Price.
They just need to go into the community and meet these people and understand that taking away the valuable services that they already have is going to have a significant impact. So hopefully the appointment of the Minister of Loneliness will raise awareness of the fact that thousands and thousands of people in this country don't see anyone. They are also cutting services that create loneliness.
Well, for more on this, I'm now joined by Ray Woolford, activist and author of the new book Liberty, which is about the civil rights movement in 1930s Britain. Ray, clearly then loneliness is a serious problem in this country. Why is it happening?
I mean, the biggest problem is actually government policy. Ironically, we've now got a Minister for Loneliness, and yet the reality is, for many lonely people, community centres have gone. Why? Because of government policy. Meals and Wheels have been cut back, social care to the vulnerable and the disabled, where it used to be time to give people food, company, a chat. Now people have to choose between having a hot meal or using the bathroom. The time is so short.
So this is local authority cutbacks due to austerity?
It is austerity, but we've got to remember that the reason we had austerity was because we had to bail out the banks. 95% of the money that we bailed out the banks with has actually been paid back to the government, and yet austerity now is greater than it's ever been. And loneliness, even if you go to your local supermarket now, instead of having Amina or Darren behind the till now, it's a scanning machine. So all that intercommunication you used to have, community support workers, have gone.
All right, not being able maybe to interact or go to community centres or whatever, but what actually causes behind loneliness, and indeed the effects, more harmful than smoking 15 cigarettes a day?
Well, they are, but I mean, the biggest issue that is even a bigger number is why have we got a Minister for Loneliness and not a Minister for Poverty? Poverty represents about 10% of the population. It costs 78 billion a year. People die from it every day. And we have no minister from any political party focusing on that aspect to it, which of course is part of the loneliness. We have people who are lonely, who are so poor they can't even invite their neighbours and their friends in for a cup of tea and a biscuit because they don't have any money to put on the electric. By the government's own figures, 2 million people were sanctioned last year. That's 2 million people have no money on average for 13 weeks. How can they go out and interact with the wider community? How can they have people visit when it gets dark they have to go to bed because they've got no money for light?
The government is setting up a fund in alignment with this new ministerial position. Money, Ray, surely will be forthcoming. Is that now not going to solve the sort of problems you're talking about?
Well, I think the whole problem has been about money from to begin with. If you cut back everything to the bone, and local authorities, Tory, Labour and Green, and Lib Dem or whatever, have no funds whatsoever, they've got nothing to actually do that level of support. And what you actually need to reinstate, at the moment our community centres have been sold for luxury developments, we need our youth clubs back, we need our luncheon clubs back, and we need to really review the austerity, which hasn't worked. What it's doing is putting more people in poverty, and loneliness, of course, when people get lonely, it puts pressure on the NHS, because that leaves the only option for them for communication is the negative impact it has on their health and then the additional services that they need.
Do you think perhaps the extent of these figures may be underestimating the problem? Because there is a report that many people don't really want to admit to being lonely. There's a stigma to it.
Of course it is. Most people that are lonely are on their own, but also that the Tories are already seeing this as a May local election issue. Most of the core vote for Conservatives are elderly people who may be lonely. What they don't seem to realise is that the present government doesn't really have a clear overall strategy to create a fairer society, a more economic one, in which everybody benefits and everybody has time to look after each other. Even people's families now are running 2 or 3 jobs, and they don't have time to go and see their aunts or their relatives or support a single mum at home.
Ray, thank you very much indeed for joining us. Ray Woolford, thank you.
Pleasure.
In Barcelona, almost 20,000 people staged a demonstration demanding the release of pro-independence politicians facing accusations of sedition after promoting Catalonia's split